Hi, welcome back to Faith and Conviction, and I'm your host, Ray Harris. I want to welcome you to this week's Torah portion. It's Torah portion 31, 3:1, and we are going from Leviticus chapter 21, verse 1, down to chapter 24, verse 23. Again, we are in the book of Vayikra. That's the Hebrew name, and it means he called, and that's what it means in English, but we know the book is Leviticus. So the Torah portion is Emor, and it means to speak or say. So let's take a look at our keyword here. We find our keyword in Leviticus 21 verse 1. It's the fifth word, and Strong's numbering on that is H559. H559. Now, Brown Driver Briggs has a whole bunch of stuff about this. It means to speak, to say, to utter, to say in one's heart, to think, to intend, to boast, to act proudly, to avow, to avouch. So I guess when you're looking at this word, depending on the context, it really defines what it means. Esword says that this Strong's numbered word H559 is actually in the Hebrew about 5,300 times. That's 5300. That's a tremendous amount of use about this word speak or say. So in the King James, it translates this word a whole bunch of different various ways, the way we would think. Say, saying, saith, said, saidst, sayest, speaketh, spake, as in the old way of saying spoke, speak, spoken, answered, tell, told, and a bunch of other stuff. So there's a whole lot of different translation that comes over from the Hebrew into the English, and I guess depending on context gives you that idea. Now what we want to look at though is Leviticus 21 verse 1, see what the King James and some various translations are doing, and make our connection over here to the New Testament. So Leviticus 21:1 in the King James reads, "And the Lord said unto Moses, Speak unto the priests, the sons of Aaron." So the complete Jewish Bible says Adonai, that's how the Jews refer to Jehovah, said to Moshe, speak to the Kohanim. Now that's a word for priest. Speak to the Kohanim, the sons of Aharon. So the Jewish Publication Society has the Lord said to Moses, speak to the priests, the sons of Aaron. Now this is pretty powerful because God definitely always wants Moses to speak to the priests and to communicate certain things to them, and then God would have Moses speak to the people and communicate things to them. So what we want to do is see how the Hebrew was translated by the Greek, and it says kai apen kurios pros mausen legon, and that's the Greek word that we're going to look at. That's G3004, legon, apon tois eriusen tois huios araon. So those are the words that we're looking at in the Greek of Leviticus 21:1. Now the Strong's number on there is G3004. That's what we find in the Greek New Testament. Now the Strong's number in there connects to the Greek word lego, which means by thayer, to say, to speak out, to teach, to exhort, to advise, to command, to direct, or to point with words. So a lot of this stuff is going on, and it's different ways of saying different things, but it's all about saying or speaking, communicating with language in one way or another. Esword says in the Greek New Testament, with its concordance in the Esword, that it is in there about 1,300 times. So again, this is really found a whole lot in the Bible. So speak was in there about 5,300 times in the Hebrew, and about 1,300 times over here in the Greek. And I don't know how many times it's in the Greek Old Testament. And all we're saying is the Bible has a lot to say, and it has a lot of people saying a lot of different things. So what I wanted to do, because the way in which Greek works, it has different endings which convey a different tense, voice, and mood, and different number of people and things like that. I wanted to just use what matched specifically in Leviticus 21:1, and that Greek word is legon. And so I went through the New Testament and tried to find some stuff. So in the New Testament, saying, legon is translated as saying. But it's also, saying translates legonatos and legonates. So I'm like, okay, well, we need to be very careful because I want to try and keep congruent as very best I can for lagon. Now, the infinitive, to speak, that means you do to and a verb. To speak was legate. I'm sorry, not legate. That means speak. But legain. And legate means speak. So I wanted to use a verse that just had this word lagon. And I found one, and I think you'll like it. That's Matthew 5 and verse 2. And in the Greek, it ends out with autos legon. And you'll see where this connects here in just a moment. And it says, he opened his mouth and taught them, saying. So this is Jesus beginning to speak at what we call it a Sermon on the Mount. So he opens up his mouth, teaches them, saying. Now that's the same Greek word that's over there in Leviticus 21:1, lagon. Now I want us to think about this just a little bit. We know that to say and to speak are very similar, but they actually convey a little bit different idea when you're using the word. So think about this. Then Leviticus 21:1, it uses the word lagon, and over in Matthew 5 verse 2, it also uses the word lagon. But over here in Leviticus 21:1, it uses the English word speak, but over here in Matthew 5:2, it uses the English word saying. Now think about this just a moment. Let's change something here. Let's try to keep it just a little bit similar like the Greek. What if we go back to Leviticus 21:1, instead of saying speak unto the priest, you say unto the priest. Now see, there's a little bit of difference there, because when you speak to someone, you don't necessarily, it's almost like you're just giving a discourse. You're just giving the information and you expect them to pay attention. But when you're saying something, you can say something and you're engaged and you got an active participation. Okay? Now when you pay attention to this in Matthew 5 and verse 2, what if you have Jesus and taught them speaking? Now see, the reason why I ask this is because over here in Leviticus 21:1 and Matthew 5:2 is this Greek word, lagon. So can we get a similar flavor on that, just to carry an idea from the Old Testament over here to the New Testament? The Greek is consistent on these two verses, but the English is not. It goes from speak to saying. So I'm not saying that we are having a tremendous argument. I'm saying it's about flavor, the flavor of language. We use languages to color things. This is why we read books and we can read stories. And whether it's a fiction author or a nonfiction author, the way in which they choose words matters, because it paints a picture. And what we have here is we're trying to paint a picture. What happens if we choose speak and speak, or saying or say and say? It changes it just a tiny bit, just enough to flavor it to give you an idea of, well, you know, maybe it wasn't just saying and they were having a conversation like it's all, oh wow, this is so cool, but he's speaking to them directly, giving them not just advice, but moral teachings and thoughts about how to live life. Jesus there in Matthew 5. This is powerful. And this is the cool thing when we go from English into the Greek of the New Testament, to the Greek of the Old Testament, to the Hebrew, so we can see what's going on. These are cool things. These are grammatical. I understand that. Sometimes we get lost in the details, and we don't want to get lost in the details because we don't want to lose focus on God and Messiah. But it really is interesting the way in which the English and the Greek and the Hebrew languages work to convey thought to you and me about God above and the Messiah. These are cool. These are the cool things. I hope it's been a blessing to you. And until next time, continue to seek God, know Messiah, find hope.